I was just doing some research and stuff for videos, and I was like going through the ship pipeline, just, perusing the ships that still haven't released to Star Citizen, and there was one that really jumped out to me. Of all of the ships and vehicles on this list, shout out to Colonial Movers, by the way, he's great at compiling all this kind of stuff. If you look at all of these things, most of them are like specialized. The Orion, the Endeavor, the Crucible, Merchantman, the Javelin even. I mean, we kind of have that in game, but you get what I mean. A lot of these are locked behind some like specific gameplay. Vulcan, Nautilus, Pioneer, Apollo, the Raylan. We went over that recently. But then you come across the only vehicle that's left from 2020, the good old G12. And you think to yourself, where the heck is the G12? I'm not a huge, not a G12 fanboy. Okay, I don't have the tattoo yet. But it is kind of like, it's a little bit of a bummer when the recent Greycat MTC came out, and I'll show you why in a little bit here. But I wanted to show you the story of the G12, because it was introduced about 5 years ago now, Invictus Week, and it was talked about throughout the years, but it's still nowhere to be seen. And again, I don't really think that's a big deal. Once we get into this vehicle, you'll see it's not like a huge standout that's going to bring a lot to the game. But it would be, I think this is the perfect year to drop it in the game when they're trying to get so many of these things out. But, unfortunately, it's easier to just do a newer vehicle. But anyways, here's the introduction of the G12. Take a listen. The ground vehicle we couldn't get.
And this year is pretty exciting because the Navy just recently acquired some of Origin's brand new ground vehicle called the G12.
The G12 Origin rover is basically Origin's entry into this market. It's I guess a competitor to the Ursa rover, but this is classic Origin, good looking, cool styling, high quality. It's essentially a two-man vehicle, and the base version has capacity for 2 SCU. There are 3 variants of the G12. There's the base version, there is the racer version, which is for the enthusiast, and then we have the third and final, which is the combat variant, which is why it's here at the show, was built for the UEE.
I'm sure the question will come up of Origin and the Navy seems like an odd group.
It does. I was literally just about to say that.
To come together. The thing to remember is that even though Origin is known for luxury, they manufacture actually a lot of sort of military and law enforcement ships. It's also probably, again, like the sheer quality of the workmanship. They tend to be pretty solidly made ships and they're well designed. I mean, they also
like the black model. This does look pretty nice, especially if this stuff is truly matte black.
Just look cool as hell, which I feel like somebody, they can justify it all they want, but like, it's probably one of that things where like the dude who first presented it was like, this thing is sweet. I'm sure we can come up with a reason to have our admirals roll around in one of these things. So in addition to the ship hulls or vehicle hulls as well, we have our sort of main floor of the Bevic Convention Center has been sort of converted into sort of naval event space where we have several different areas that people can go visit.
Okay. Clearly, they're getting into Invictus Week talk. That was back when Invictus Week was first starting to be a thing. Now, obviously, they're very casual about it. But back then, that was new. So that's a look at the G12, and that's really how they introduced it to us. There wasn't too much fanfare besides that. But you hear a couple things that they say there, specifically that it is an Ursa competitor, that it's supposed to look cool and stylish, and that it has its military applications. Actually, kind of funny when I was researching for this, I came across this thread where people were talking about it, and there were a few. I posted this on Blue Sky and Twitter, asking other Origin owners. I'd love to hear from you guys, Origin fans in the audience. How do you feel they've been doing with the brand? Because this person here, I think, is saying, and this is a little poetic, original sail jump owner here, we need to accept that Origin is a goofy remix of the brand Origin once was. It's been tainted to be some weird plastic-obsessed design language brand instead of the edgy performance-oriented brand it once was. What we really need instead is a new performance luxury brand that captures the vibe we are missing, because this ship has sailed. Just wait to see what they do with the M50. That actually is an interesting take, because we did get a new performance / luxury brand right? Mirai has been brought onto the scene as of 2 years ago now, I think. They've been, they came on with the Fury. Actually, I can find this pretty quickly. They did an episode where they literally defined Mirai compared to Misk. There's a whole Inside Star Citizen episode. It's a while ago. Was it this one? Get Furious? I don't think that is it. I think it was more about branding than anything. Let's see. No, there was another episode. The Future of Performance. Like, this guy called it.
So Mirai was a new brand that we created, which was...
They literally put it inside of the Origin ship to introduce
So Mirai was a new...
It's almost like they actually did pass the baton on to Mirai. Or it's just a huge coincidence. I mean, or, logic dictates that the design styles flow in the way that this person saw and that the company wants to. It just like it.
A new brand that we created, which was basically a performance division of Misk. So when you look at Mirai, we start off with brand and positioning, the brand bio. So
yeah, this right here, this will tell you. Where's Origin? See, Origin's right here, commercial high design. Mirai they put up here. Honestly, just leaning it in because it's military. But if you look where they are both the highest design companies in the whole game. They're just split across by commercial and military applications. And, they can always cross over into that. I mean, the G12 is clearly a military application of Origin. So we're going to keep going through this talk. But, start to think, what if, how much of a redesign does the G12 need? Would they even benefit from making the G12 just be a Mirai ground vehicle at this point and redesigning it to compete a little bit better? Because we're going to get into the comparisons here with the vehicles that this thing is going after, and you're going to see rather quickly that it doesn't hold up. So here is a little bit of a mention of the Mirai, the Origin G12 from a couple years ago. This is 2 years ago at Invictus Week. Listen to what they were saying about it.
We'll be updating for the we'll be showing you an update on the Santok Yai for Alien Week in just a few weeks.
Montreal working on some variants of an existing ship. I'm just trying to...
That was, I think, the cutter.
Mentally go around the floor.
Pretty sure that's all of them.
Retaliator stuff we're doing, we talked about before.
G12?
G12 will be going... So in the next year...
In the next year... May 23.
Backlog ships that will be going into production. Caveat, things can always change.
Yeah. Things can always change. It's a good caveat. Good call, John. And things clearly did change.
Polaris, Apollo.
We got that.
G12,
Apollo's being worked on. No G12.
Raylan.
I think we can all see that the Raylan is nowhere near coming out.
X1s.
Got the X1s.
I'm noticing something.
So the G12 is clearly, it was part of the plan for that time period. Now, if you look at that time period, that was 2 years ago, maybe a couple delays here and there. But eventually they did introduce the MTC. Now this was this year. So there's a time difference there. But I do think if we start to look at what both of these vehicles are, it does kind of seem like they just threw the MTC in to replace the G12 because one, the G12 was overpriced at release at $70, which is, I'm pretty sure, more than the Ursa. Yeah, that's a tough sell. And two, people have already bought the G12. So a new vehicle is obviously more potential sales. I mean, I don't think that really matters that much. If you look at the size of the community now versus when some of these ships and vehicles came out, like the community is twice the size it was when the Valkyrie came out. So even if they released the Asgard as a variant to the Valkyrie, it's still tons more people are going to see it, right? And then they update the Valkyrie, and that could get more sales. You get what I'm saying? They this could have been a sales decision. I don't know why else they wouldn't have the G12 in the game. Let's take a look at how they compare, though. First, I'm going to go with the Ursa because it is the stated competitor. If we scroll down to technical specs, you can see that the Ursa is longer than the G12. But it is shorter and it's actually skinnier than the G12. Those freaking wheels on this thing, they really stick all the way out there, which is something they kind of struggled with in the MTC as well, that people have pointed out. and sort of limits this vehicle. It's always the wheels. Maybe we should just start making our ground vehicles without wheels. Maybe if they could just hover. I don't know. It's the future. No, I like wheels on vehicles though. So as we continue, you can see that the G12 does officially carry 2 SU. The Ursa doesn't, but I've seen people fit it in. We don't know how that's going to be affected by physics later. They have the same size turrets. So between the size and the turrets and the overall design, which is a closed cockpit rather than open like the Cyclone, these are feeling pretty much like direct competitors. This one is meant for exploration. This one's meant for touring. For that reason, the Ursa seems a little bit more robust, actually, considering this is a military application. The Ursa does seem a little more like it's meant for hardcore exploration, whereas the touring G12 seems like it's meant more for getting around, almost like they show it here, a civilian vehicle, or a ferry for your high-level military people, like they said. Now, there are a couple variants. The G12, you got a military variant and a racing variant, and like there's some more choice. For the Ursa, you've got your medical and your links, ambulance and luxury. So between these two vehicles, there's actually a pretty decent amount of gameplay covered if they can make them all differentiated. But they don't yet. And it's hard to imagine just how much they can, especially when you bring in the MTC. I'll bring this over here, and we'll see that the MTC, which just came in, also compares to the G12. 7 meters in length, it's a little shorter than the G12. 2 meters in height is a little shorter in height than the G12. And 5.5 meters in width is also skinnier than the G12. So the MTC also outplays the G12 sidewise. But then you also see that they have the same size turret. And honestly, officially speaking, the MTC can carry 0.5 SCU. That's like, the difference between 0.5 and 2 is, I think, bigger than the difference between 5 and 10. It's not, it's bigger than the difference between 5 and 20. Let's go by scale. Because 0.5 is going to get you extra med pens, extra food, extra water, extra all this stuff that 0 literally wouldn't allow. So having 0.5 SU on the NTC is kind of a win, just because you probably aren't expecting to carry anything too big anyways. Having 2 SU is a benefit, I'll give you that. But between the similarities in these vehicles, it really doesn't make much sense that they didn't bring out the G12 instead of the MTC. They're both closed cockpit. This one does have suit lockers, so that's I guess an additional benefit on top of this one. The closed cockpit part is also a big deal, in my opinion, versus something like the Cyclone or any hovercraft. It's going to mean a lot to have an atmosphere when you're traveling around these planets. We've already seen that with Hathor. So I do think that it's worth it to have more closed cockpit competitors. I just like, this was a choice for sure. But I leave it up to you. Why have we not gotten the G12 in your opinion? Most of the time they are holding back ships because they are based on a certain type of gameplay. And I don't think that this is really missing any gameplay besides maybe scanning. Even these missiles would work. $60, not 70. Sorry about that. So yeah, there's a little short deep dive into the G12. Hope you learned something today. Hope you got something out of this, and hopefully you, I don't know, are excited for ground gameplay to get better at some point. I think it's going to be really fun with these vehicles. It depends on when they're going to be able to get the physics figured out. Either way, see you in the next one. Have a good one.